Wide receiver is really the only position that is hard to figure out who to start because running back, you have one or two guys on your team that actually score points. Tight end, you're lucky if you have someone that can give you 8 points. Quarterback, you have. So it's very important to get these wide receiver start-sit decisions correct this week. We're going to go through, we're going to rank our top 30 wide receivers for week 5. But before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. We are going to continue to live stream every single day until the end of the season. So make sure you hit the bell next to the subscribe button if you want to come out to those live streams, get your questions answered. And of course, you can go down to the comment section if you're not able to make it to the live stream. Ask me your questions there. I'm going to be trying to answer as many of those comments as I possibly can. Last but not least, you will see some player props on the screen of this video. You can find those player props over on Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $200. And you can get into some fantasy football drafts with us on those live streams during the year. But that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into our first tier. We're going to go Cooper Kupp 1. Nothing to really talk about. I will say, very tough matchup going up against Dallas. I mean, Dallas has not allowed a team to score 20 points so far this season. This is a very good defense, but Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp. Doesn't matter. At 2, we are going to have Justin Jefferson going up against Chicago. I mean, it is what it is. With Jefferson here, I know some people were worried about what he gave you in weeks 2 and week 3, but in reality, he's Justin Jefferson. You start him every week. Now at 3, this is something that I want to talk about. We are going to go Jamar Chase in this same tier. Yes, Jamar Chase is in the same tier as Cooper Kupp. I'm not going to be surprised if Jamar Chase outscores Cooper Kupp this week. And I know that is very aggressive, but if you go back to the last time the Cincinnati Bengals played this Baltimore Ravens secondary, and yes, keep in mind, the Ravens secondary did have a multitude of injuries, but still, Joe Burrow over 500 passing yards. I think that if we're looking at Jamar Chase, while yes, he has struggled over the past few weeks, he has struggled. He's not giving you 30 points a game. Yes, he's come back down to earth a bit, but he's still averaging over 10 targets a game so far this season. Love the matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. If you could go trade for Jamar Chase and get a 10% discount right now, please go do that ASAP. And now dropping down to our next tier, we're going to have Stephon Diggs going up against Pittsburgh. With Diggs, I mean, I really thought he could have been the wide receiver 1 overall last week going up against Baltimore. I don't love this matchup for a multitude of different reasons. I think that I'd be very surprised if the Pittsburgh Steelers make this a competitive contest at all. So I don't really see the potential for the Buffalo Bills to have to push the pace of play in the second half. On top of this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is pretty good. They're not great, but they are respectable. I think you can have Diggs at 4. At 5, we are going to have Devonte Adams. We're going to have to continue to monitor this as the week goes on. But if Hunter Renfrow were to miss this week again with the concussion, then Devonte Adams will go up to tier 1. But right now, I am expecting Renfrow to come back in. Y'all know we were saying don't draft Hunter Renfrow coming into the season. We were saying that this is a situation where Adams is going to demand and dominate the targets here in Las Vegas. It's an okay matchup going up against Kansas City. If anything, it's actually a pretty good matchup, knowing that the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be forced to throw the ball very often. But now dropping down to our next tier, we're going to have Debo Samuel going up against Carolina. Debo was great against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday night. Now, what's interesting is they didn't really use him too much as a rusher here. Going up against Carolina Panthers, this matchup's kind of whatever, because I think that the 49ers should be able to handle their business. I think they should be able to just run the ball consistently. Kind of like to see that they're not using Debo Samuel as a rusher for his long-term value, so he doesn't have to go out there and risk getting injured every single time he touches the ball. I think that it's a more sustainable way to use him, even if it's not going to produce a top 3 finish like we had a year ago. Now our next guy, Tyree Kill at 7. Tyree Kill, great matchup against the Jets here. Now, what I will say is I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to lock on to Tyree Kill and just give him every single target this week as he did a week ago. Yes, I know that Tyreek Hill dominated with Teddy B, but I think what happened, and we talked about this so many times before, is the backup quarterback comes in. He goes, okay, this is not my game plan. This is not a game scripted for me. I'm not even prepared. What I need to do is not win the game. I just need to make sure I don't lose the game. Let me go hit our first read. If he has 2 inches of separation. We're going to throw the ball to him. We're just going to make sure that we don't go through our progressions, get sacked, throw an interception, fumble the football. I think you should have the ball spread out a little bit more, dude. Jalen Waddle, at least. I'm going to be hoping that that happens. We'll talk about Waddle later on. But we'll have A.J. Brown here at 8. With A.J. Brown, down performance this past week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville does have a good defense, but to be fair, the down week for A.J. Brown, the down week for Jalen Hurts here, had A.J. Brown with 5 receptions, 95 receiving yards, an elite offensive line, an elite offense. A.J. Brown's still dominant. I am very excited about him, even if it's not the best matchup in the world going up against Arizona. Now our next wide receiver, Mike Evans, going up against the Atlanta Falcons. With Evans, was dominant this past week. Y'all know we had him as a buy low wide receiver over the past 2 weeks now. It's going to be a little bit too late for that. But I think that Tom Brady, as we've said, is going to be significantly better going forward. The reason he was starting off slow is you were looking at the context of no Godwin, no Julio, Mike Evans missing time. So if your wide receiver 1 is Russell Gage, your wide receiver 2 is Cole Beasley. Of course, Tom Brady was going to start off slow. I think this should be the offense that we saw at the end of last year going forward. Now, our next wide receiver in this tier is going to be T. Higgins. Love the matchup for T. Higgins. I wouldn't fault you at all if you wanted to have him higher than this. Going back to what we were discussing with Jamar Chase earlier on, great spot for the Cincinnati Bengals passing offense going up against a horrendous Baltimore Ravens secondary. I think you should be very excited. T. Higgins was phenomenal against the Miami Dolphins this past week. And it is a great matchup. Now going down to our next tier, we're going to have Jalen Waddle at 11. To be fair, you could probably put Jalen Waddle at the bottom of this tier, but y'all know Jalen Waddle, my most drafted wide receiver this season, someone that I'm trying to root for. And with Jalen Waddle here, I want to make a point because I already know we are going to have a lot of people going down there to the comment section and saying, oh, Mason, do I start Jalen Waddle or do I start Curtis Samuel? Do I start Jalen Waddle or do I start DJ Moore? People panicking with Teddy Bridgewater under center. Like I said, I think that Teddy B spreads the ball out a little bit more. No, I don't think that Jalen Waddle continues to be a top 5 wide receiver as he was with Tua Tagovailoa under center, but I'm not worried about the matchup against the Jets. I think he has a low in wide receiver 1, high in wide receiver 2 still. Now going over to CeeDee Lamb at 12. Lamb going up against the Rams. Obviously a tough matchup on paper going up against Ramsey, but Stephon Diggs, great week 1. Drake London, great week 2. Hollywood Brown, great week 3. Debo Samuel, great week 4. Like literally, the number 1 wide receiver going up against this Rams defense has been perfectly fine so far this season. With CeeDee Lamb, what I'm a little bit more concerned with is I think maybe Cooper Rush takes a step back. I think with Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz coming back into this offense and being fully healthy players, maybe the target volume goes away from CeeDee Lamb here. I'm excited for him. Now, our last guy in this year is going to be Chris Godwin. I know it's probably going to be a surprise for some people, but hell, Godwin had as many targets as Mike Evans a week ago. His first week back from the hamstring. Not worried about the matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. Maybe you make the argument, well, Mason, if Tampa gets out to an early lead, they're going to run the ball. Nope, not what we saw last year. What we have seen before from this Bucs offense is they're going to go through, even if they're leading by multiple touchdowns in the second half. They are in the business of stat padding for Tom Brady where they can, which to be honest, that's what they should be trying to do with Tom Brady. Make sure that nobody could ever reach those records. They'll be throwing the ball in the second half with aggression as well, even if they are winning this game. Now going over to our next wide receiver, we're going to have Christian Kirk, just consistently dominating with targets, operating as that alpha wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville, and an offense that is much better than I expected it to be. Now, of course, they weren't great this past week, but this past week they played the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have a very good defense. The Houston Texans have a very bad defense. I think you should be excited about Christian Kirk. Now our next guy, Michael Pittman. Y'all know I wasn't a big Michael Pittman guy coming into the season because people were valuing him as that top 10 wide receiver, claiming that Matt Ryan was some massive upgrade. I didn't really think that. I was so much smarter. I was drafting Kyle Pitts instead in the 3rd round. Of course, I'm a freaking genius now. You're looking at Michael Pittman going up against Denver. I don't really like the matchup. It's on Thursday night. I think we want Jonathan Taylor playing. I know you can make the argument that if JT doesn't play, maybe they look to throw the ball a little bit more. Maybe Michael Pittman has, higher percentage of overall team touches, but still at the same time, I think if you don't have Jonathan Taylor here, this offense may be very bad. Now going over to our next guy, we are going to have Hollywood Brown at 16. To be honest, I think you could move him below this. If you wanted to move him down to the bottom end of this tier, I'd be completely fine because this is a very tough matchup going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that Kyler Murray is going to be a great buy low candidate for the long term when we eventually get DeAndre Hopkins back in. But this offense is probably going to struggle in a very tough matchup as Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, the entire Arizona Cardinals offense has looked very bad without DeAndre Hopkins at the beginning part of the year. But now going over to our next guy, Mike Williams at 17. So this is a very hard wide receiver to rank. We don't know if we're going to get Keenan Allen. Now, if Keenan Allen plays, Mike Williams will fall. If Keenan Allen will play, Mike Williams will fall. The matchup against Cleveland isn't the best. Obviously, Cleveland just shut down Marcus Mariota to 7 completions this past week. But Justin Herbert does look better. This offense looks better. It's just, do we get Keenan Allen? Of course, I'm going to give you all an updated rankings list at the end of the week. So just make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Just make sure you have that bell hit next to the subscribe button. That way you're able to check out the updated rankings later on. Now, our last 2 wide receivers, we're going to go Sutton, wide receiver 18, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 19. Having these guys back to being ranked back to back. I know a lot of people think Sutton is the alpha dominant wide receiver. And if you're looking at the raw points, or even points per game, sure, Sutton has been better this season. It's because Jerry Jeudy left early week 2 with a shoulder and rib injury, so he only played half of week 2. And on top of it, I mean, he was banged up week 3. If we look at fully healthy Jerry Jeudy weeks 1 and 4, he's actually been more productive than Courtland Sutton. So I think that there's not a big gap between these players at all. I may even make the argument that in a few weeks when we know that Jerry Jeudy is 100% healthy, that he will be that wide receiver 1 over Sutton as we thought he would be coming into the season. But now dropping down a tier, we are going to go Chris Olave at 20. With Chris Olave, very similar to what we were talking about with Keenan Allen and Michael Thomas. It's hard to know exactly what the situation is going to be in New Orleans, where we don't know if we're going to get Jameis Winston. We don't know if we're going to be getting Michael Thomas. We don't know if we have Alvin Kamara. There's a lot of uncertainty with this Chris Olave ranking. So if we have Michael Thomas missing, if we have Alvin Kamara missing, better prepare yourself to see Chris Olave later this week to probably be ranked a lot closer to Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, especially if Jameis is in here. Even if you don't like Jameis from a real life standpoint, he is that DGAF quarterback that is just going to air the ball out. Now our next wide receiver is going to be a pair of teammates, Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin. Now, y'all know I've spent the past 3 weeks now saying, oh, sell high on Curtis Samuel, sell high on Terry McLaurin, sell high on Antonio Gibson, fade this entire offense here in Washington. You're going to have Carson Wentz coming back down to earth. And that's exactly what's happened. He has come back down to earth. And yes, even with him being more disappointing as of late, we are going to be moving these guys up our rankings. And the reason for this is it looks like Jahan Dodson is going to be missing. With Jahan Dodson missing here, well, we were concerned about this being a bad offense overall that was going to have to split between Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dodson, Logan Thomas, the running backs. With the Jahan Dodson hamstring injury, with them possibly being out a week or two, you remove a pretty big piece out of that group. It's going to be a small offense as we've already discussed, but at the same time, these guys are going to get a bigger piece of it. I don't hate the matchup against Tennessee. So yeah, we were a lot lower on Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel this past week and the week before. Like we had them as mid wide receiver 3s, but the situation's better. Even if the production over the past 2 weeks has been pretty damn disappointing. Now I will say at the same time, to be fair to Washington, they went up against Philadelphia. They went up against Dallas. They went up against some of the better defenses so far this season. Now, our next wide receiver, someone I may just have to sit here and take an L on, Deontay Johnson. Y'all know I really like Deontay Johnson. I mean, Deontay Johnson and Jalen Waddle, those were our 2 guys that we love drafting in fantasy this year. I thought Deontay Johnson was an intriguing buy low candidate because we were looking at him as a wide receiver that averaged 10 targets a game pretty much over the past 2 seasons. And through the first 3 weeks this year, he had double-digit targets in every single contest. Well, this past week, you only had 204 passing yards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. George Pickens had 102 of them. George Pickens had half of the receiving yards in Pittsburgh. I think this is going to be a very nasty situation going up against the Buffalo Bills. I actually want to look up what the line is going to be on this game because I would imagine with Kenny Pickett, of course, he should get better. I mean, he's not going to be throwing 3 interceptions every single game, but going up against an elite level defense like this in Buffalo, this is going to be a bloodbath. And dear God, this is the largest spread I have seen of the season. Last week, the largest spread was 9.5 points. Aaron Rodgers playing the Patriots. You have a 14-point spread with Kenny Pickett traveling to the Buffalo Bills. I really liked Deontay Johnson last week. I think we were probably wrong. I think we got to drastically lower him down on rankings, so he'll be here. Now, Devonte Smith going to be our next guy, 24, going up against Arizona. As we discussed, not the best matchup in the world. I think it would be better if they had DeAndre Hopkins in here where maybe they could put up a fight against the Philadelphia Eagles. But still, I mean, with Devonte Smith, he is going to be an extremely volatile asset on a week-to-week basis. It just comes down to how do the Philadelphia Eagles put points up on the board? Is it through the air? Is it on the ground? Clearly, we've seen them go back and forth. But now, drop it down to our next tier. We're going to have Brandon Cooks, 25. With Brandon Cooks, a very good week this past week. However, I think it's going to be a very tough matchup going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, at least a tougher matchup. Jacksonville Jaguars have shut down a couple teams defensively here. I mean, going 2 weeks ago, they allowed Mike Williams for 1 reception. And I know, yes, Houston was pretty good this past week. Y'all know, maybe I'm just a Houston Texans hater. I literally live in Texas. You would think I would like the Texans. I think that this is still going to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. This is a very bad team. So even if Brandon Cooks is getting consistent target volume, I think he has the cap ceiling overall. And now going over to our next guy, Drake London. Drake London going up against Tampa. I mean, in theory, it's a good matchup where we've seen the Tampa Bay Buccaneers give up a decent amount of volume through the air because you can't run against them. But Marcus Mariota completed 7 passes a week ago. Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons offense killing our love for Drake London, killing our love for Kyle Pitts. Oh my gosh, it definitely sucks. Amari Cooper at 27. With Amari Cooper, I mean, I know people got mad at us for ranking him too low last week, but this is what we discussed. You are not going to have consistent passing volume in Cleveland until you get Deshaun Watson here. I still love Amari Cooper in the second half of the season. I drafted him in so many best ball leagues where you had that tournament in weeks 15, 16, 17 where we need to be looking for the ceiling then. However, until we get Deshaun Watson in, I'm still going to be pessimistic about this overall offense. Just like I will be with DK Metcalf going up against the New Orleans Saints, 28. I know everybody's always worried about Marshawn Lattimore, blah, blah, blah. Look at what Justin Jefferson did. Don't overthink the matchups to that extreme. With Metcalf, definitely not expecting the Seattle Seahawks to put 48 points up on the board. Definitely not expecting the Seattle Seahawks to roll the New Orleans Saints defense as they did the Detroit Lions, however. Now, our next guy going to be Garrett Wilson, 29. Really don't like the matchup going up against the Miami Dolphins defense. With Garrett Wilson, I actually kind of like what we saw this past week. He expanded his role. This was the first week we saw more snaps, more routes run for Garrett Wilson than Corey Davis. He was pretty much identical. He was neck and neck with Elijah Moore in routes run as well. So if we can carry over this volume with the efficiency he had at the beginning part of the year, I think you should be very excited about Garrett Wilson. Our last guy on this list, we are going to go through, throw DJ Moore there. I mean, so disappointing. Baker Mayfield, please do something, Baker. Do something, please. Matchup's not even good against San Francisco, so please go to the comment section. Let me know who you think I should have here instead. Y'all know I'm going to expand these rankings and update them with injuries and overall matchup concerns later on in this week. We're also going to expand them to the top 36 wide receiver rankings this week. So go to the comment section, give me your thoughts on them. Also, leave any questions you have down there below. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. Hope I get to see you in the live stream tonight. So make sure you hit the bell next to the subscribe button. That way you know when we go live.